This episode was rather strange, as we learned quite a few things, yet a lot of things were still left to be revealed. So let's break down this episode and talk about all the things that we got delivered. But on a side note, the OST for this episode was insanely good and helped to build up a lot of tension and hype for things to come. Hello everyone and welcome to Dueling with Downton, and today we're going to be going over all things that happened in episode 72 of the Yugioh Go Rush anime series. Because this episode did confirm and heavily hint at a few things. Things like who qualified as the 8 finalists for the tournament, as well as what happened to the furniturized people after Zion's defeat. So let's start off with the finalists, as this honestly on paper sounds like a boring lineup. Yet some of these choices actually do make a lot of sense when you dive a little bit deeper into the characters that they've chosen. Starting off with Kawitel. Now, firstly, this was pretty weird as we don't really consider Kawitel as being a great duelist. He's average at best. So, seeing how he managed to qualify at this stage was a little bit of a shock. Yet, the reasons to why he's here, I think his insight and observation skills will prove to be very useful, as he was on the team studying the relic, as well as the fact is he was also heavily involved in the Earthdammar storyline at the beginning of the show. Therefore, he's got extensive research in that regard, and if somehow Earthdammar does come into play with the darkness cloud that we've been seeing, I can see him being useful. Now, Rovian. Her progress throughout this tournament was hinted throughout the entirety of the episodes that we've had so far, and it's cool to see that she went undefeated, even though it doesn't mean that she actually killed anyone of any value, because you can basically just face weaklings all the time and still progress in this tournament. Now, I'm going to be honest here. When I was writing up the list of the characters that made it to this stage, I completely glossed over and forgot that Rovian was announced. So I'm really hoping that the upcoming duels that we get to see from Rovian really helps elevate and boost her character back to the glory that it once was. Because over the last couple of arcs, she'd been pretty non-existent. Because honestly, I love her cards, so let's see more of them. Now, a quick question about Rovian. If we see a Darkness Rovian that's possessed, will her hair turn green as well as her eyes? Or will she have red hair and green eyes? Curious. Next up, we're going to look at Yudias, Yuhi, and Yumu. Now, all of these are obvious, as they're our protagonists, but we know that Yuhi and Yumu have a reason / a plan to enact in this tournament that does relate to both the relic and the darkness that we've been encountering. But what I really liked about these two twins being involved here was within this episode, their interaction really showcased their like-mindedness, and it kind of referenced the telepathic connection that these twins share that we saw during the first Zwijo versus Yudias duel. As well as the fact is, it does really highlight Yuhi's observation skills, because normally we have Yumu expediting and telling us all this information that she's found out. Yet Yuhi is now showing once again, like he did in the maximum arc, that he's on par with her insight and observations, showing a more mature side to you. Now, as for Yudias, his goal is simple, yet tricky, but also very intriguing, as he wants to show a Park that dueling is fun. After all, he scared her, he terrified her, with his last duel against Zion in him using darkness to win. Now, this terrified the Park to the point where she is still cowering in fear and isn't even watching the matches. She could probably hear them, but obviously that is where the difficulty comes in. Something needs to happen with the commentary during Yudias' duel that makes a Park hear and go, I need to go and see this. And then she gets that joy rejuvenated back into her character. Whereas the intriguing aspect for Yudias here is seeing him trying to overcome that darkness, because the darkness is still within him. We see glimpses of that in the openings of this episode. So it's going to be fun seeing how he tackles this. Whether or not he'll use that power again, or whether or not he'll reject it and hesitate during the match, forcing him to misplay. But then, why is his darkness different from everybody else? That was a question that was posed within the episode when UTS were talking to each other. I think the fact is because the darkness entered Yudias after his duel with Phaser, which I think was hinted and foreshadowed at thanks to Transig kind of darker evolution during his duel against Phaser. Because we know that Yudias sees himself in Transig. So I do think if that's the case, it would be kind of a cool nod to it. As for Nyanda Star, I really don't know why she's here, but we do see her transform in the preview for next week, so hopefully we learn more about her reasoning then. Now then, on to Zwijo. It's clear there's a bigger reason for him to be here, as he's looking into the relic. We know this because he left Dinios with the relic study group. We now know that he's looking into the darkness cards, as we see him looking through Mitsuko's deck after she got defeated and noticed that the card had disappeared. So, judging by dialogue, it does seem like he's encountered this darkness before. And with his past history, in us knowing that he's interested in finding the creator again, I would say it's a safe assumption that Zwijo believes the creator is involved somehow. Now, with his character, we know he's been very focused, and when he's on a mission, that's all he thinks about. However, in this episode, he came off as more of an antagonist than our darkness-possessed Mitsuko did. Because he was very emotionally cold/detached in this episode, and dare I say, even manipulative. Because he knew what he could say to trigger a reaction/action or emotion out of Mitsuko. And he used that to analyze how the darkness would react. And personally, I don't really know how to feel about that, because that's kind of scummy behavior. But the whole idea of him, asking her questions throughout the duel, like, do you remember the first time that we met? And then, obviously, admitting himself openly afterwards that he doesn't even remember. Like, you might just call him being dense at that point, but it did seem intentional. And his just emotionless reactions kind of pair nicely with what I was saying here, in where he was quite detached and quite cold. Now, as for Mitsuko's character, I don't really know the reason as to why she was active in this tournament, unless she was either influenced by the darkness that was already possessing her at the time, or she found out that Zwijo was involved in the tournament and wanted to get her revenge. However, seeing her in this episode did add a spark of fun, and I really did like seeing her more aggressive side/persona when she was possessed. The voice acting for her character was on point in this episode as well. I love the different range of tones and pitches that were delivered perfectly. And of course, we do continue this development/evolution of her crazy mind fantasies, and we do learn more about the character herself, like how she actually met Zwijo in the first place. And yes, it does come out as a classic romantic comedy trope in where you're running and you're late, you got bread or toast in your mouth, and you bump into someone, and thus romance is born. Now, another thing this episode did confirm to us was defeating Zion does not restore all of the furniturized characters back to normal. Now, why is this important? Well, again, last week I mentioned how M-chan, the girl with the pink M in her hair, could be the original/a new Oko girl. Like Sorako or Umiko. Now, we saw her on Zion's home planet, and then shortly after that, we see her in human form back on Earth. But on Zion's planet, she was a piece of furniture. And with Zion being under some evilish influence when he gained that power, I can't see him being kind enough to restore M-chan back to normal and then sending her back home. So that's why I think there are multiple copies of her scattered around the universe. Or galaxy. Also, this is a bit of a reach, but when we do see the Odo twins talking in their room, we do pan to the night sky. And within that sky, we see a UFO flying past. And then when we watch the Professor Study segment, where they're in the kind of his lair and they're dancing, I'm pretty sure there's a character that does resemble one of the Oko girls as a silhouette. So could this be a hint that Otis is actually in this time period and he might be making an appearance very shortly? In terms of the monsters that we get to see in this episode during the duel, I like the new fusion monster that Zwijo used, where where one of his monsters fused with Dinios' ace. And it does make me hope that Dinios doesn't get more screen time / door time, because his ace monster is now being used by, the guy he likes. And, well, it's a little bit disrespectful when using it against Mitsuko, but it is what it is. Again, it's another way of Zwijo trying to provoke a reaction out of it. Mitsuko's new fusion monster looked really cool as well, and I liked how when it changed to a dark attribute, the orbs around it went from light to dark. And I thought this was a really nice creative touch that they've done with monsters in the past, and I'm really glad they did it here. Just shows that the animators, do actually care. So, ending on a bit of a funny note. As things stand, we know that the furnitured people are still furniture. And we know that the person who swallowed the gear in the last episode was in fact Shubuha. Now, one of the people that are a piece of furniture at the minute is in fact Tremolo. And we know that at the minute, Phaser's scrolls are keeping Shubuha alive. So I can see Phaser trying to bargain with Shubuha and say, can you turn my brother back to normal? And I'll give you loads more of these scrolls. Cheers. And then we also know that if whoever wins this tournament, which is most likely going to be Yudias or one of the Odo twins, is going to win something that Phaser created, which again is probably going to be something that's edible for Shubuha, and they're going to extend his life longer. So I can see whoever wins the tournament giving Shubuha the prize in exchange for turning the Kamijo family back to normal. In terms of Dinios, well, we don't really need to turn him back to normal, do we? Or Zwijo could just bully him / threaten him or offer something. Either way, I just find that now they're going to need Shubuha's help, and he's still nowhere to be found. Now, overall, this episode was a decent, enjoyable episode. Nothing spectacular, but nothing, really bad. Like, we got a duel, we got some amazing music and OST, lovely. Animation was brilliant, and we got a few things confirmed and things we can speculate on. What's not to like? So those are my thoughts on this episode. Let me know yours in the comment down below. Hope you've enjoyed. If you have, hit that like button and subscribe for more things Yu-Gi-Oh! Have a great day. Arigato, matane. Goodbye.